बड़ा मिस करते हैं आप, पता ही नहीं क्या कर रहे थे।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Shabe Jumah program. Inshallah, we'll start with the recitation of Hadith Kisa followed by Dua Kumail. For Hadith Kisa, I would request Brother Ahmed Virani to start us off. Bismillah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة أفؤادي. فقال: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء، فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أماه. فقلت: عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة أفوادي. فقال لي: يا أماه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جداه، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن فقلت: عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني فقال: يا فاطمة، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي خليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله، أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم، وسلم لمن سالمهم، وعدو لمن عاداهم، ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرض مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا رب ومن تحت الكساء؟ قال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. وهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام، ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي: إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيئة ولا فلك يدور ولا بحر يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله: إنه نعم، قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء، فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي عليه السلام: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع متضرع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت طاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعزم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عزم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فاضح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته اللهم عزم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا إلهي ومولاي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسأله على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعا وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب. وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثور يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته. فلئن صيرتني في العقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك من حلمك ورأفتك ورحمتك أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتتولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أزهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة وبخدمتك موصولة وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها بردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارده ومن كادني فقده واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخسهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني عثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Hello, we'll have the ziyarah, and then we'll go for the speech. السلام عليكم يا رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا نبي الله، السلام عليكم يا حبيب الله، السلام عليكم يا خيرة الله، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى، السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا خال الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من متهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والهجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الشهداء. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباء، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله ووداءه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصر، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وعمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. يا العباس. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أبي القوم إسلاما وأقوى بهم إيمانا وأقوى بهم بدين الله وأحرتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك، فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة استهلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام، فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر الأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، وألهمه الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وأنيس النفوس، أيها المدفون بأرض توصل يد مفرضة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان، السلام عليك شريك القرآن، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل اللهم خرج ظهورك وجعلنا من أعوانك أنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد. Inshallah, over 2 rakat namaz after namaz al-Maghrib.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا اللهم صل. أما بعد فقد قال أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب عليه الصلاة والسلام إلى ابنه الحسن من الوالد الفان المقر للزمان المدمر العمر المستسلم للدهر صلوات على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. If you remember last week, we had talked about this letter number 31 from Nahj-e-Balagha, which is the letter that Amir al-Mu'mineen had written to his son, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam. Of course, we went over some of the aspects of this khutbah from the concepts of as to why Imam saw the need of writing such a khutbah, documenting such a letter. And we also touched upon the correlation of this khutbah with the words of Quran, ayat of Quran. And then I provided a very brief summary of all the segments of the khutbah. So from the first segment, the second segment, and then from third to the 10th segment, and then from 11th to the 20th, and then from 21st to the 30th, all of these up to 30 segments that you find in this khutbah, we had basically given a brief summary, a gist of what is being mentioned in those sets of segments that we had grouped them together. And then we also analyzed the aspect of this khutbah that as to some of the words that we will inshallah focus on tonight do not correspond, or let me put it better, are not appropriate for the maqam of the imamat and the infallibility of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. And to which we said it might have been the case that since he doesn't mention the name, ila ibnihi, and Imam does not say min al-walid al-fan, ila, towards his son, he does not mention the name, could be the fact that he's referring to other sons of his who are not infallible, other than Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein alayhi salatu wassalam. So these two are infallible, but Amir al-Mu'mineen has other sons as well, other children as well. Amongst them is Hazrat Abbas, for example. Amongst them is Muhammad Hanafiya, for example, the notable ones. But it is still, believed by the Mufassirin of Nahj-e-Balagha that it is still being addressed to Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam, for him being the eldest of the children. And the fact that some of the words might not feel appropriate, it is the case that a father is speaking from his high status and exalted place in maqam in front of his son. Although some places son might be superior to the father as far as the rank is concerned. For example, the rank of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is definitely above and beyond his father, Hazrat Abdullah, right? No doubt about that. But here it's Amirul Mu'mineen himself, who's superior to all of the other imams. So therefore, when imam is speaking to his son, he's speaking from the maqam that he has himself. And where he speaks, this would not have any contradiction or would not be, inappropriate coming from a father to a son. Second, we also address the fact that usually these sort of things are mentioned to someone who might be younger. While this khutbah, we mentioned last week that this was in the Insarafihi when he was returning from Siffin. So Imam Hassan and Mujtaba at that time in the year 36, 37 after Hijrah is about 34 years old. So he's not a youth or child by any stretch of imagination. He's a grown man, but it's still youthful figure where Imam is addressing. And the third possibility that we had given, it's not an address to Imam Hassan Mujtaba per se. It is to all of us. With this letter, Imam is trying to reach every one of us, because the riwayat that I had recited from the Holy Prophet in which he said, Ana wa Ali abawa hadil ummah. Me and Ali are the fathers of this ummah. So therefore, Ali ibn Abi Talib is the father of all of us. And from the fatherly aspect, Ali ibn Abi Talib is addressing us. But how does this message get to us? This message gets to us from the most secured source, and that is through his son, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, through his other children, and that's how we receive this message. Also, there is a point that some of the stuff that is being addressed over here is very, very basic in a sense that it is bringing our attention toward worldly aspect. And we know that not just the infallible children of Imam, but even those who are not Masum, from among the children of Imam Ali, they were far away from any of such worldly attractions that Imam is mentioning. Don't go after this world, that will deceive you, and so on and so forth. So once again, they say, well, not only that it may not be appropriate for Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, but it still may not be appropriate for other sons and other daughters either. From that aspect, we also decline and deny, because the wasiyat of Amirul Mu'mineen, when he narrated after he was struck by the sword of Ibn Muljim, Lanatullah alayh, on 19th of Ramadan, when Imam wrote or addressed that wasiyah. If you look up that wasiyah, which is usually recited in Ramadan upon the shahadat of Amirul Mu'mineen, many of the khutbah choose to recite the words of that wasiyat of Imam Ali, which is, of course, filled with an immense amount of knowledge. Imam addresses issues such as salat, Quran, Hajj, neighbors. These are very, basic things which we should all as Muslims take care of. And in that khutbah, in that letter, Imam is addressing his both sons by name. So when he addresses both of his sons by name in that letter, where he's talking about namaz, he's talking about Saum, he's talking about Hajj, he's talking about Quran, he's talking about, neighbors, then what difference does it make that Imam, without mentioning his son's name over here, is speaking about such things? So who wrote this letter and who is it for? This portion describes, so this was just a summary of what we discussed last week. I just wanted to bring you up to par. From here, inshallah, we'll get into the new discussion. This portion describes the title and the contents of the letter. Since normally when writing a letter, it is from so-and-so to so-and-so. Min fulanin ila fulan, right? From me to my son, from me to my wife, from me to my father, from me. This is how it is addressed. Imam Ali, instead of naming himself, I, Ali, and addressing it to his son, Ilal Hassan, for example, he uses attributes that will facilitate some of the warnings for the future. That is the hikmah behind it. That he's using these attributes that will facilitate what Imam wants to address in order to warn in what is ahead. Basically, Imam is speaking from, does he know the future? Yeah, we can say that probably. From ilm ghaib that Allah has given to him, to the extent he knows what's coming up. He knows to the extent that what will happen to Imam Hussein. He knows to the extent that what will happen to Imam Hassan. These things are known. In fact, about Imam Hussein, Rasulullah had already predicted even 30 years ago, prior to the Shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen in the 11th year after Hijrah. So he knows what is coming in future, what is lying ahead. But not just that he knows or he can predict what is coming about. He's speaking more from the experiences that he has gained, that these gray hair are gray because I have seen the ebbs and flows of life. I have gone through the real struggle. It's one thing to study. I can study the struggles of a human being. I can study the struggles of, for example, Imam Hussein in Karbala. We have all addressed, we have all heard, we all read that what happened in that 1 year, in 60th year after Hijrah till 61st year after Hijrah. What happened in that 1 year? We have read a great deal. I don't think there's any follower of Maktab-e-Ahl Bayt who hasn't read or heard about the events of Karbala, right? But as the shair and the poet would say, Shanidan kay bawad mithl didan, that listening and hearing is not same as seeing it. If we had seen those events, imagine what would be the case. So we have read it. It's heart-wrenching. It breaks our heart every time. We weep and we cry every time we hear the sad tale of Karbala. But imagine if you had seen it with your own eyes, and if you had experienced it with yourself being part of that, army. Those are two different experiences. So you can read all about someone's struggles, but until you face those struggles yourself, you're not going to be completely comprehending it. So this is where Imam ﷺ, when he's inculcating that there's one thing, oh my son, even if you are infallible, you are lacking, which is what? The experience that I have gained in the past 60 years of my life. So imagine Imam is around 61, 62 years old at that time. So from that aspect, this is also facilitating some of the warnings for the future. So he begins by mentioning 6 attributes for himself. And then he mentions 14 attributes for his son, which is actually twice as much attributes that he mentioned for himself, he mentions for Imam Hassan. With these attributes, the atmosphere for this letter becomes very bright and clear. What is he about to say? Where is he getting? From that very beginning get-go, you'll understand what is to come. So let's dive right into it. From the father who is shortly to die. So I'm going to mention the first 6 that are associated with Amir al-Mu'mineen. And then we'll mention the 14 that are with Imam Hassan. These are the 6 for Imam Ali. So these are the attributes that he's explaining about himself. From the father who's shortly to die. Min al-walil fan, as the word said. Who acknowledges the hardship of times. So I've seen what hardships have done. Who has turned away from life. Mustaslim, submitted. And who has submitted himself to the calamities of time. Who realizes the evils of the world. Number 6, who is living in the abodes of the dead and is due to depart from them any day. So these are the 6 things that Imam mentions about himself. I'll repeat it one more time. Father who's shortly to die. The one who's seen the hardships. The one who acknowledges the hardships. The one who submitted himself to the calamities. The one who's seen and realizes the evils of the world. The one who's living in the abodes of the dead, those who have departed. This was their abode. Now we are living in it. These are the 6 things that Imam mentions about himself. Imam uses these accolades for himself for a variety of reasons. There are many reasons that we can, choose and address. Firstly, he wants his son to understand that I'm writing this letter with a load of experience I have carried on my back and gained through passing of the time. So that's first and foremost. The fact that I'm speaking to you as a father to a son, I'm speaking from what? Loads of experience that I have gained carrying on my back. Life of Ali was not an easy life. Enjoyable life that he's Khalifatul Muslimin, he's son-in-law of Rasulullah, he's Imam of Ummah, so he can relax and he can live a very enjoyable life. No. Facing hardships after hardships. During the time of Rasulullah, going through all those battles, struggling, hoping to attain martyrdom, not achieving it. And then after the wafat of Rasulullah, which is probably more difficult for Imam. Prior to the wafat of Rasulullah was difficult, but post wafat of Rasulullah, it's even worse. The 25 years of the silence that he has to go through, with those khulafa in front of him that he has to cope with. And then eventually when people run to his door unanimously asking him to become the leader of the Muslim world. Now you come to my door after 25 years. So Imam's struggles are known. And then once he's in power, those merely four and a half years, he's engaged in civil war. So you have Siffin, you have Jamal, you have Naharawan, to name a few. These are major battles that Imam, has to face and focus and make difficult decisions. As an army man, you and I can walk into it. We don't have to decide, what the call is. Whatever our superiors have given us the order, we're going to go ahead and oblige. But imagine sitting in the seat where you have to execute the order. That hot seat. Every decision that you take turns your hair gray, right? The hot seat that a president of a country sits on. The decisions that they have to take in situation rooms, for example, right? Those are difficult things. They take a toll on your, not just physical body, but as well as your, spiritual soul and your nafs. So that's what Imam is going through. So first, he said he wants his son to understand that I am writing this letter with all the experience that I have gained, carried on my back from the passing of the time. Secondly, if one is given advice and he speaks with humility and humbleness without making it sound like a command, his speech will be more effective. So he's speaking to his son, whom he loves a great deal, but he wants to explain the sour and the severe nature, difficulties of the life, which is a tough pill to swallow. So he has to give that information without being too, bossy, demanding, and in a tone which is commanding. So he tones it down a little bit, showing love and compassion to go ahead and deliver something which is tough to bear with. It's not an easy thing to bear with. Similar to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does in Quran. When he wants us to do something which is difficult, he begins with a prelude, begins with the muqaddamah that softens it, and then he comes with the command. For example, fasting is one of the most difficult of the ibadah. Do we not agree? You can do namaz, anyone can pray. You can pray sitting down, you can pray laying down. And even if you have to pray standing up with perfect health, you can pray, anyone can pray. Even, non-Muslims, ask them to pray, they'll pray. Keeping a beard, observing hijab for women, non-Muslim women, they'll observe hijab. For one day, they'll observe it. It's not that difficult for them. But ask them to fast. Now, some have actually fasted and they've shown solidarity toward Muslims in these past years as the awareness is coming about. But as they fast for one day, well, one day is one thing. You have to fast for 30 days. That's one difficult ibadat. So I'm not doing it unless I really, there's nothing else to do, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, realizing that it is one of the most difficult of the ibadat. It's not going to be that easy. So he begins with what? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Oh, those who believe. So first Allah shows what? His compassionate nature toward us, that he believes that we are believers in him. We're faithful to him. And he says, I'm going to tell you about something which people used to do before you. It's nothing new. This has been done in the past. It's not a new law that is being introduced. With that muqaddimah, he says, now fast. Fasting is prescribed upon you. And that is for your own benefit. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, because you'll become muttaqi with it. Our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, لَذَّةٌ مَا فِي النِّدَى, that sweetness that you find in the nida, in the call of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, removes all the difficulties of the ibadat. All the difficulties taken away from the ibadah once it's presented in such a beautiful manner. So that's as far as Amirul Mu'mineen is saying, when you speak to someone, giving advice, speak with humbleness, making it sound, don't make it sound like a command. Therefore, your speech will be more effective. Thirdly, the son should know that soon his father will leave and his son must take his place. Knowing this reality will make him more receptive towards these warnings. Now, if someone says, no, you'll be alone, you'll be here forever, no, nothing is happening to you. I said, no, this is a reality. I am taking my last breaths. Every person must taste the agony of death. I will also taste it. I will also depart. In fact, I'm going to depart very soon. I know that for a fact. So he's preparing him. And with that preparation, if someone knows that it is upon them now I have to do it. Up until this point, I could have just, turn it down or save myself from it, the difficult task. Now it's upon me. Ab to meri hi zimma hai ye kaam. Now there's no one else who's going to do it. Now that it is upon me, absolutely, what happens? I'll be more receptive to what the commands are coming in. I'll pay more attention. Up until this point, I wasn't listening. Up until this point, I might not have been paying attention. But now that tomorrow I have to go ahead and present, now I'm all ears. It's my turn tomorrow? Okay, now I'm all ears. All year long, I didn't listen. But tomorrow, because I have to go ahead and present, I'm going to be listening attentively. So it says, when you go ahead and show that this responsibility will be shifted to your shoulders tomorrow, there will be more reception. So the terminology that Imam uses, min al-walidil fan. Fan is originally fani, right? Urdu mein bhi use karte hain fani. Farsi mein bhi lafz hai fani. Fan, fani. The ya is removed so that it could balance out the rhyme with the subsequent words. Like in shairi, you do the same thing in order to go ahead and have the perfect rhyme for the next couplet or the next line. Kafiya bandi ke liye, this is something which is done. So the ya is removed so that it rhymes with the later sentences. Points at the fact that I have lived my share of life. Min al walidil fan. Imam is not talking about that he's lived a life of annihilation, because the word fan literally means annihilation. No, he's lived a very fulfilling life by all standards. He's lived a life which is any one of us will demand that life. Well, of course, from the aspect of spirituality, not from the aspect of the hurdles and the difficulties that he faced. We want that sort of lifestyle. But he says, I'm close to bidding farewell to this world, since Imam is over 60 years of age at that point. The sentence when he says, al-muqirru liz-zaman, highlights difficult passages in everyone's life. The sweet and the sour events that we face, which will happen no matter what. You can't hide and run away from them. The sentence, al-mudbiru al-umr, emphasizes that I'm on the slope of the end of life. That means this decline, this downward action. It's not going up anymore. It's going down all now. Point regarding the ihsan and being kind toward parents. One of the mufassirin of Quran, Shaykh Qarati, in his Tafsir An-Nur, he highlights under the ayat of Surah Bani Israel, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. He said 4 places in Quran, Allah tells the children to be kind to their parents. بِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. 4 places. And then not a single place does Allah tell parents to be kind to his or to their children. Not a single place. If anything, he counts 6 occasions where Allah tells the parents to not go overboard, to not do too much. Actually stop, take a break, hold on, step back. You're going too much. If anything, Allah is stopping them. And on the other hand, Allah is telling them 4 different occasions, وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. So 4 places, direct instruction to the children to be kind to the parents. Not a single place in Quran where parents are addressed to be kind to their children. If anything, they're stopped from being too much kindness, to showing too much kindness. What's the difference? The difference that he mentions. And this is where the thinking process, contemplation comes in Quran. You contemplate, you'll think about these things. He says, and he gives an example. He said, when you're driving down the hill, you can let go of the gas. The car will just go down on its own. You put it in the neutral, the car will just speed up on its own because it's all downhill. But when you're driving uphill, if you're riding a bike especially, a bike would be a better example. If you're downhill, going downhill, you can let go and just go. But when you're riding back up, not only that you need to struggle, but someone might need to actually push you from behind. He said, this is the difference between parents and the children. When it comes to the parents, they're downhill. They don't really need any push. It's all, forgiveness. It's all thanking them. It's all being kind to their children. Anything that we can do for you. But on the other contrary, it's an uphill battle for them. Allah has to force and push and exhort them over and over, so that they don't neglect this very important aspect of their lives, to be kind towards their parents. So that's the difference that he mentions. Imam over here, of course, is saying that I'm on a decline. I'm on a slope. From here, it's only death. I'm not going to be revived back again. This is only going toward this physical, of course, death of mine. The sentence, al-muqirru liz-zaman, highlights the difficult passages everyone has to go through. Mudbir al-umr, Imam says, I'm on the slope of the end of the life. Mustaslim al-dunya refers to the dominance of events over humans. There are many events that take place in this world. They're dominant. We have nothing that we can do in front of. When an earthquake comes about, when a flood comes about, when you have other events that take place, which are either man-made or natural disasters. There's nothing that we can do, even with all the technological advancement that we have. Sometimes we're just, there's nothing that we can do. So he says, refers to the dominance of the events over humans. As-sakin masakin al-mauta, points out that the houses in which we reside were most likely built and paid for by our ancestors, those who lived before us. They built and we live in it. Sometimes we will build and deliver to the future generations, and they will reside in it. Nothing will remain for us. He ends the sentence by saying, وَالضَّاعِنَ عَنْهَا غَدًا. It refers to وَالضَّاعِنَ عَنْهَا غَدًا, refers to the imminence of the moment of leaving this world. That is, I look and I see this, and I took up writing this letter, I took this pen in my hand with the awareness of all these features and the understanding that I have. I'm prepared to deliver it to you, and that's why I am documenting these very important words for you. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So at this juncture, Amirul Mu'mineen turns his attention and towards the one whom he's addressing, and that is his son. And now we've had a lengthy conversation who this son is. If you missed it, you can look up the previous lecture. Without mentioning his name, with these 14 attributes. The letter is to the son who yearns for what is not to be achieved. He's going after. And so that's why when I translate this, you'll see the argument that we were trying to raise by some of the commentators saying that it is not appropriate for a person like Imam Hassan or a person like Imam Hussein because they're infallible. This may not be appropriate for them, but we gave it reasons as well. So the person who is, yearns for what is not to be achieved, who is treading the path of those who have died, who is victim of ailments, who is entangled in the worries of the days, who is target of hardships, a slave of the world, a traitor of his deception, a debtor of wishes, a prisoner of morality, an ally of worries, a neighbor of grief, a victim of distresses, who has been overpowered by desires, and a successor of the dead. So some of these are fine, but some in the middle, you say, well, it may not be appropriate for the Zat of Imam, but we'll explain nonetheless. The first attribute Imam chooses for his son here, in fact, for all of mankind. So we explained that might be the case that he's speaking to his eldest son, but it is to all his sons. And that includes you and I as well, being part of this ummah. He said, Al-mu'ammile ma la yudrik, is that, he is after the affairs in this world, which he won't achieve. So you and I are running after things, some of the things that we are running after, which we may never achieve them. We will never gain access to, because man wants a world free of problems. We don't want any problems. We don't want any sorrows. We don't want any difficulties. While the nature of the world is mixed with problems and suffering. The sooner you realize that there are problems, the better it is for you. The longer you continue to live in this denial, the worse it'll be for you. The sentence when Imam says, As-salike sabila man qad halak, implied meaning here is that all human beings walk in a path that ends in death. As Quran says, Kullu nafsin zaiqatul maut. Imam in other occasions in Nahj al-Balagha also addresses the fact that every step that we take, every breath we take is a step towards death. The breath that we're taking is a step towards death. And there's no exception in this law. There's not a single person in the world who has come in this world not to die. Now you can draw exceptions like Hazrat Isa, for example, who was taken away by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in occultation. You can make exceptions to our Imam of the time, who's been alive for 1100 years. Death hasn't come upon him either, but that's exception from the aspect that there will be death for him as well when he reappears. So when he reappears, when he comes back from this hiding, from this occultation, from this ghaiba, and when adl and insaf has taken place in this world, and when he fights the evil, the shahadat will take place. So that is still true for everyone. So there's no exception to the law of death. Every soul, when Quran says, Kullu nafsin zaiqatul maut, every soul must taste the agony of death. The sentence when it says, araz al-asqam is an explanation for that which has passed. Because human beings, whether they like it or not, are the target of all kinds of disease in this world. Some of us might be inflicted with certain types of disease, some of us might not be. And what better example than what we have just gone through in this pandemic, coronavirus. Man-made, whatever you want to call it, but many people in the world, close to 50 million, 3 million have passed away, 50 million infected, or getting close to that number, maybe 20 million, I don't know, 20, 25 million have been infected in the world. 3 million are definitely have passed away because of the disease. And of course, these numbers are still emerging. So it's a big impact. Many people are infected by this disease. So Imam is saying what? Imam is saying that we are all targets of different types of disease in this world, in childhood and youth in one form, at an old age in another form. So when we're children, there are certain types of disease that follow us. When we get older, there are certain types of disease that follow us. And then the sentence was rahinatul ayyam, considering that the word rahina means hostage and captive. It refers to the fact that man is always caught in the clutches of days and time. The passing of time takes him with it. As the time goes, you can't fight against the time. Time will take you with it, whether he wants it or not. And at the end of the day, at the end of his life, the world lets him go and deposits him into his grave. That's all the time that you had. The terminology wa ramiyatul masa'ib, considering that the word ramiya means something that is used as a target for shooting arrows. Inshallah, I'll conclude with this as I'm running out of my time. Ramiya is target for shooting arrows. It is pointed out that the calamities that occur in our lives, regarding our property, regarding our relatives, regarding our family, regarding our friends, our loved ones, have targeted him from all sides. These have targeted this insan from all sides. Can you imagine that I'm a victim of my relatives, my friends, my family, my loved ones, my property, my wealth, all that targeted me alone. And then we do not find anyone who has not suffered in his life. Maybe not with all of those means, maybe with one or two of those means. Imam said in another place, Darun bil bala'e mahfufatun bil ghadar. He says the world is a house that is wrapped in a mire of calamities and known for its unfaithfulness. So the sooner you realize it, the better it is. Salawat bi Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Difficulty is that these arrows that are coming toward us, only if we knew that where are these arrows coming from, only if we knew that who's shooting these arrows to us, only then you and I will be able to better equip ourselves. The Shair said, "Walau annani urmi bi nablin ra'aytuha walakinnani urmi bi ghayri siham." If only I would see that where and what direction this arrow is coming from, only then I'll be able to protect myself better. But the fact that I don't know and I'm surprised all the time, it's very difficult to protect myself and have a shield. Imam says in the last sentence, wa abd dunya wa tajirul ghurur. It is pointed out that a man is like a slave in the clutches of the air, lust and the splendor of the world, and these things take him everywhere. And his pride as a trader is due to the fact that he earns capital by trying in this world. He brings that is nothing more than a mirage and a collection of trips. When you look from far away, this sarab, this mirage seems like there's water. You get closer to it, what happens? It disappears. And that's what the tricks of this world are. And lastly, Imam mentions the sentence, وَحَلِيفَ الْهُمُومِ وَقَرِينَ الْأَحْزَانِ. It is pointed out that all life is mixed with all kinds of sorrows. The grief of sustenance, the grief of illness, the grief of losing opportunities, the grief of betrayals of some friends, and grief of conspiracies of enemies. It is possible to find someone who has not been captured by these sorrows in his lifetime. You realize and look in the story of Alexander that when he saw that his he was close to death, his mother was still alive, and he knew that it would be very difficult for his mother to see her son die. So he went up to her and he told his mother a way to alleviate her pain. He said to her mother, "Shed tears over my death and mourn for me. Have a majlis for me, but do not cry alone. Invite a group." Look at the hikmat that even Alexander is mentioning. "Invite a group to help you in this, those who cry for me, not for the ones, those who are crying for the troubles." The mother followed the will after the death of her son, went to the neighbors, friends, relatives, acquaintances. She asked everyone that, are you not sad? She shared her grief. One said that my husband had died. Another said that I'm suffering from a child. Third said I'm suffering from the losses in the business. Fourth said that I'm suffering from some illness of the pain that I have. The mother realized that there's no single heart without a sorrow in this world. And according to the famous proverb, disaster is tolerable when it becomes public. When everyone is involved in it, then it is easy to go ahead and tolerate the disaster that you're facing. So basically, that was the gist that Imam ﷺ was explaining in this part of this khutbah, or letter number 31 from Najl Bala wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alameen.